everybody, it's Paige Evans. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have a new process video to share with you today. This layout was made for the Silhouette blog, so I have a couple fun techniques showing how my Silhouette Cameo helped me create this layout. And it's also got hand stitching, flowers, lots of pattern papers, watercolors, and a picture of me and my friends, so it's fun all around. I started with my Love with Stitching Holes cut file, and you can place it anywhere you want. I'm just going to cut it from white textured cardstock, so go ahead and click send. I like to use a ratchet blade. You can use your auto blade, whatever works best for you, and keeping those settings the same and clicking send. So it takes about 10 minutes, maybe about 15 minutes for the Cameo to do all the work for you. So here I've got a little clip of my Cameo cutting away. Meanwhile, I unloaded the dishwasher, so multitasking at its finest. And then I carefully peeled it off the mat. Try not to use a super sticky brand new mat or else it might tear, because these are it's kind of a delicate cut file, pretty thin. And then with the stitching holes on there, I want to do a chain link stitch. And so I'm coming up through one hole, down the next hole, up the next hole, and then I'm looping. And I'm going to create loops. And I learned how to do this on YouTube. You can find pretty much anything on YouTube. And it's my favorite form of stitching right now because I love the texture that it adds. It's super texturally. I don't know if that's a word. Anyway, so I use all 6 strands of white DMC embroidery floss, and I actually brought this project with me to the Crop and Create event in Winnipeg, Canada, where I taught, and so I thought it was only fitting to use a picture from that event, which I will show you later. But it took about, I want to say about 8 hours to stitch this entire thing, and again, it's very delicate, and it gets a little bendy. You can see it's kind of wonky, but once you attach the photos and pattern papers to the back, it holds its shape again. So once you're finished stitching, turn it over and tie a double knot and cut off the excess thread. Flip it over and ta-da! I love the texture that this adds. It just really makes the cut file pop and create a wow factor on your layouts. If you don't want to do a chain link stitch, you could also do just a basic back stitch and get some awesome texture. So I want to show this fun technique. I have the inner heart that I designed. If you want that, you can send me a message or leave a comment below, and I can even add it to the cut file, so it'll be in that same cut file. And I enlarged it to fit inside that heart, but with this cut file, when I upload it to the Silhouette store, it'll be the right size. So you don't need to worry about this part. But what I want to show you is how you can print the picture that fits inside the shape exactly and then have the Cameo cut it for you. So I have the print registration marks on. It's size 8.5 by 11. And if you drag and drop your photo into that shape, look, it automatically just fits right inside. It's perfect. So I'm going to send it to my printer, and it prints out the heart image and the registration marks, and I'll show you what that looks like. Just letting it print out. So here we go. This is what my printer printed, exactly what you see in Silhouette Studio, and then I'm going to place it on the mat, left aligned to the top and left edges, and then sending it to my Cameo, and the Cameo is just going to cut that heart right out. You could fussy cut it, but why do that when the machine can do it for you? So that's a super awesome technique, one of my favorite features about the Silhouette Cameo. So here it is, cutting it out. And I have a perfectly shaped heart that fits behind the original heart. Awesome. So what I'm going to do now is have my machine cut the inner pieces, and this is something I like to do often, that it's just a different technique instead of tracing and fussy cutting. So I've copied and I'm pasting it into a new document and releasing the compound path or ungrouping. So right click, release compound path, right click, ungroup, and then that turns all of the shapes into individual pieces. So I'm going to delete the ones that I don't need. So the stitching holes, I deleted that layer, and I'm deleting the outer layer. So I'm just left with the inner pieces, and I want to offset them a little bit so that when I cut the pattern papers, they'll be a little bit larger so they won't just fall right through. So I'll be able to add glue and around the edges and they will stick. So again, just deleting all the pieces that I don't need, and I'm left with the pieces that will fill the letters, and I'm just spacing things around so I can see what the letters will look like. And then I'm going to offset them. So there is an option on the right hand side. It's the offset tool. And then I'm just decreasing the size a little bit and then click apply. And then you want to delete the inner pieces. So you're just left with the offset pieces. And now this next part is how I get my Cameo to cut all of the pieces at once instead of running it through every time. So I've turned on the grid, and now I'm going to move the shapes around to fit more manageable squares inside this grid. So you can see that piece at the top, I will need to cut a 2 by 1 inch square. That little piece, I'll just cut a 1 inch square. And the larger letters are about 4 by 6 inches or 6 by 6 inches or 5 by 6 inches. Just copy. It's like a mirror. You know, you mirror what you see in Silhouette Studio with the papers that you put on the sticky mat. So I've moved everything into manageable sized squares on the grid, and I'm kind of just gonna figure out which pattern papers I want to use behind each letter and the little sections between that get divided because they're overlapping. And I'm using my new Horizon collection with pink paisley, and again, just mirroring what I see in Silhouette Studio to the sticky mat. So that L, part of the L was fit in a 4 by 6 inch space, so I'm cutting a piece of pattern paper to 4 by 6 and putting it in that same spot. Now I'm cutting those tinier pieces that are just about 1 inch or 1 by 2 inches. And this is one of my favorite techniques. Again, it just really makes backing cut files so much easier than doing it by hand. So back in Silhouette Studio, I'm ready to send. Again, I like to use a ratchet blade and kept the other settings the same and clicked send. Takes about 2 minutes for the Cameo to do its thing. Just cut out these inner pieces. And then for this, I do like to use a super sticky mat so that the pattern papers don't shift, or you could use washi tape to hold them down. And then you peel the pieces off the mat, and I'm using liquid glue. And this is the step that's going to help the cut file regain its shape, just look like how it's supposed to. So everything's a little bit wonky right now, but as you adhere the pattern papers and the photo in place, just make sure that you move everything, nudge everything around so that the angles are straight, just how it's supposed to look. I like using liquid adhesive to do this so that it gets really good coverage. And I went with a color scheme of pinks and blues and purples, but it would also be fun to use a whole bunch of different colors. That's what I tend to do, so this is kind of unique for me to use this kind of color palette, and it was fun. I like variety. All right, flip it over, ta-da! So it's looking pretty cool, pretty fun. I'm using this text background paper, also from my Horizon collection, and I want to jazz up the background. So I'm going to add white gesso and scrape it across. This is a cool tool by Vicky Boutin. And then I let it dry, or rather I sped up the drying process with a hairdryer. And once it was all dry, I'm going to drop watercolors into huge pools of water. So adding the gesso is an important step so that it doesn't bleed through the paper. You can see how I didn't get the gesso all the way onto the edges, so you can see the water seeping through, and it turned out okay in the end. But if I were to redo this, I would have the gesso go all the way to the edges, and you can still see through to the pattern on the background. So that's what I like about using this gesso, just a fine layer, but it helps make doing mixed media on the background a little bit easier and helps make the paper more durable. So I'm using my favorite watercolors by Prima. Pastel Dreams, again doing big pools of water and splashing and dropping the watercolors directly into those pools of water so they spread around, they blend together. And I didn't use a hairdryer to dry this up. I wanted it to look more natural, and then it really warped the paper, so I ran it through my ink machine a couple times and that flattens it out. So that's a fun tip. If your paper warps, just run it through a ink machine. Or you could use an iron, but make sure to put a protective layer on top. For embellishing, I am going to add clusters of flowers. There's a pack of floral die cuts in my Horizon collection, and there's 4 letters. The heart replaces the O, so I'm going to do 4 clusters of flowers, and I'm using different depths of adhesive to attach everything in place, so foam squares or glue dots. I also added a layered tag, and then I journaled around the heart, and that is the finished layout. So I hope you are inspired to try some of these fun techniques using your Silhouette Cameo, and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in my next video. Have a great day, everybody.